Good morning, everyone. Jim Laird live from Clearwater, Florida. So, had to change some topics around. Was hoping to have a guest on today. We moved that to next week. So, no problem. We adjusted a few things. I'm going to go over a video I shared on my YouTube and my Instagram yesterday. We're going to talk about that, which will be fun. So, today we're doing a webinar at 10 a.m. Eastern. If you're on our email list, you can check your inbox and get in on that webinar so you can watch it. It's detoxification, exercise, sauna, has a lot to do with blood pressure. So it's part of our Wellness Secrets, which is part of the Fundamentals of Wellness Mastermind group with coaching that we have going on, that you can join at any time. Most of our other courses we basically release every several months. This is our ongoing coaching mastermind group that has weekly calls. We also just added a daily accountability app that you can add yourself to as soon as you get into the course. And if you have any questions about it, if you're interested in it, you can email me at jimlaird@stillmanmd.com, and I'd be happy to answer any questions for you. Please give us a like. Helps us out in the algorithm. So get on the email list. Go to stillmanwellness.com. Every week we have a different topic that we cover. And so that goes into basically the Fundamentals of Wellness Mastermind class. We're literally adding a brand new webinar every single week, which you will have access to. If you're on the email list, you can also listen to the replay. So if you're not on it live, don't feel like you're missing out. You'll get access to the replay. And then, of course, if you want access to all that, plus coaching and accountability, you can join the Fundamentals of Wellness with Coaching Mastermind. So that being said, yesterday, I shared a little clip of me working out and some of the stuff that I add into my training. I lifted weights I still lift weights, but I lifted really heavy things for a very long time. And part of that, particularly with my body structure type, leads to me being very extended. Okay. And so back in, what year was that? I can't remember, but it was sometime in the, maybe around 2012, maybe not, somewhere in there. I got in a really bad car wreck, and Dr. Stillman's here. Hello, Dr. Stillman. I actually changed the topic today because I didn't think you were going to be here. And then Lauren sent a really good topic about Chris Williams, who doubled his testosterone through like balancing his minerals and stuff. So really? I changed the topic to cool. So I changed the topic to curls for low back pain, which is a video I shared yesterday. It's in the description if you want to watch it. And one of the reasons that I shared the YouTube version of it and not the Instagram version is because the song in the background is one of the best instrumental guitar songs of all time. It's called The Rumble by Link Ray, which is like Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin's favorite song.
No
so
kidding.
it is very,
I'll take,
very
rock and roll trivia with Jim Laird for 500.
Yeah. I mean, it's so good. I mean, it's really good. I mean, listen to how sludgy this is.
Yeah.
There you go. So
I can't hear it. Your mic's editing it out. It's so good.
Yeah, it's an instrumental. It's in Jimmy Page's favorite song. So needless to say, it's basically a video of me doing a curl in a deep squat. Okay. And so a lot of people were kind of like commenting, like, what does this have to do with back pain? And I was just explaining all the years of really heavy lifting leads to this extended position, right? Yeah. And I basically got in an accident. I got introduced to this in probably 2008, 2009. I went and seen Bill Hartman. And I was having problems getting out of pain from this car accident. He was like, well, dude, it's because you're really extended. You're really arched, and you need to do things like backwards bear crawls. You need to do things to give you some options, right? So what happens is when you use certain strategies in your training, like very extended strategies, and everybody's going to have a little bit different strategy. But when you drive certain strategies so far, you need the absolute opposite so you can live somewhere in the middle.
Yes.
And so by sitting in a deep squat and doing curls, I'm getting a posterior pelvic tilt. I'm opening my upper back up, right? I'm basically doing curls, so I'm still doing guns. I love the Arnold voice, but gosh, Screw Your Freedom just messed it up for me forever. Every time there's a picture of Arnold online, it probably is one of the things that ended me up in Instagram jail, is I always just type Screw Your Freedom in there. I even went on Audible, because he just released a book.
Yeah.
And I basically wrote Screw Your Freedom in the review.
You went out of your way, huh, Jim? Yeah, hey, can I just add something to what you were saying about the curls?
Sure.
So I'm at a mastermind this weekend presenting on some health topics for some owners and CEOs of digital marketing agencies.
Hard chargers.
And yeah, very hard chargers, right? And, a lot of these guys are guys who at some point played sports. And so they spent some time in the weight room.
Yeah.
But between that, right, and some heavy lifting, and even if they haven't, right, this will happen to them. The chair posture is that the desk, your arms are pushing on it, your forearms are pushing on it, your back ends up coming back, and then your pelvis dumps forward. So we see people who are very extended through their low back and their mid back, just because they spend a lot of time at a desk. So Jim said this was from his powerlifting. If you're a keyboard warrior, a desk jockey, this could apply to you just as well as if you've never walked into the gym and picked up a heavy.
So people will say that they get the slouch posture from sitting in the desk, but when you sit all day, the pelvis dump forward position is a very strong position. So if you don't move in different ways and you don't have different strategies and you stand up and you haven't been moving all day, your body is naturally going to pick the most efficient, easiest strategy. So a really easy way to camp out is arching your back and hanging out on your low back, right?
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason why they'll say, even though they feel rounded forward, their pelvis can be dumped forward, right? And a lot of that is because they haven't moved around all day, and then they stand up and then they go into this strategy where they're basically hanging on their joints, right?
Yeah.
And so, and then it gets into the rounded shoulder forward, they start stretching their chest and they extend even more. And they need a totally different approach to fix that rounded forward. It's not as simple as just stretching your chest and doing rows, right?
Yeah.
Or it would work, but we can get into that another time. But essentially, I can work things into my exercise. Most of the strength and conditioning type things that people are doing are really good for getting stronger, but that comes at a price. So when you're doing things that basically, the more force you're trying to produce and the more strength you're trying to demonstrate, the less you want to move, right? So a lot of the traditional weightlifting exercises take away people's movement options. Now, in certain situations, if you're trying to be a world class power lifter, if you're trying to be, a 100-meter sprinter, if you're trying to, do some very specific things, that can be a good thing. But for most people, they need to add some of these things that I share on my Instagram channel to put their body in a position where they not only get stronger, but they also put their body in a position that makes them move better, as opposed to limiting movement and maximizing strength. Because most people, if they press an extra 20 pounds on their dumbbell presses, it's really not going to make that big difference in their life. But if it takes away from their ability to move their shoulders well or move their thorax well, that's going to make a big difference in their everyday life. So there are ways that we can program things into your training that help you get stronger, but also don't take away too many movement options, right? And so that's where, exercise selection is huge for that, because you're a prime example of that. You before you started working out with me, every time you trained, your back hurt. And so I just picked exercises that wouldn't allow you to use your low back. Actually started using your legs and actually started using the things like musculature instead of structure. A lot of people will get stuck where they use structure to get their stability instead of using musculature, right?
And this is why you got to sign up for Fundamentals of Wellness, because Jim does a lot of this strength training. He helped me put on 20 pounds of lean muscle mass in 6 months, and I kept that on really with minimum amount of effort, and that was only with changing my diet and going to the gym for 2 to 3 times a week 45
Yeah.
minutes. Nothing crazy, no beat down workouts, no
Yep.
wads, no puking in the bathroom after, doing a sled push, although there were a couple moments where I wondered if that was going to
Yeah.
happen.
The sled pushes, the legs burned a little bit, but the intensity was ramped up gradually. And that's what most people don't realize. Like if you're untrained, right, you really don't have to do that much to get better. Right. And so you just gradually increase the intensity. And then there comes a point where if you want to get really better, then you have to be really strategic. But for the first 3 years, you don't have to do anything loopy at all, And if your goal is to look good and feel good and live a long time, you really don't have to ever do anything that loopy. You just have to challenge yourself, not destroy yourself, right? I worked with a lady last week. She just texted me this morning. I gave her some simple resets and a couple exercises to do. And she messaged me this morning. She goes, I did that stuff you told me, but I think I way overdid it.
Shocking.
Yeah, shocking. So
we have so many high intensity overachievers that's very common for us.
This is a lady that is used to doing 5 to 6 45-minute workouts at a super high pace.
I remember. I know you're talking about,
yeah. And so I put her through like a 10-minute thing that absolutely wrecked her, because it was making her do it in ways that I was taking her out of her compensatory strategies and giving her actually things that were using musculature and trying to introduce different strategies to her. And she was shaking and sweating. She's like, I've never sweated this much before, so pulling people out of their strengths and not driving their strength too much is kind of an art form, right? And because I'm a strength coach and not a physical therapist, I can get a lot of this done just by exercise selection. But some people are so caught in that strategy. They need someone to put them on a table. They need someone in a calm environment to teach them how to actually not bear down for a lot of this stuff, because you want to bear down when you're lifting heavy things, but you also, that's why we do a lot of the floor warm-up stuff too, is we need to be able to do things relaxed as well. We need to be able to flow. We need to be able to move. When you deadlift heavy things, you lift heavy things, you need to be able to be stiff, but then you basically need to be able to flow. And a lot of people through their strength training just basically train themselves to be really stiff. And they don't breathe during the exercises. So you have to choose the right strategy for the job that you're trying to accomplish. And then more importantly, you have to be able to turn that strategy off when you're done.
Yes.
So
it's so funny we talk about this so much in exercise, but it's so true as well in
it really applies to everything.
Yeah, it applies to everything, right? I was talking to somebody yesterday here at this mastermind who was asking me about HRV, because he has his Oura ring and he's constantly looking at his data, and he doesn't understand how to interpret HRV. And he actually asked that we do some webinars on that, Jim. So we'll schedule those probably in the new year, since we have our content schedule for the whole rest of the year right now. And that's, by the way, those are for the webinars that they're exclusive to our email list. So we only send out announcements to RSVP and get notifications for them to people who are on the list. That's our reward to you for being on our list, because we love reaching you guys via email. And what he was asking me was, how do I basically interpret my HRV data? And we find people often who've got HRVs that are very low. And I was explaining to him that when your HRV is low, it basically tells us that you've been in a stressed state for a long time and that you're not recovering well, and you don't have that adaptability between the two sides of the autonomic nervous system. And what that means is that that sort of scenario, that kind of mindset, or let's say like pattern of behavior or autonomic tone is going to be created by high stress situations. Firefighter, paramedic, EMT, doctor, potentially some high intensity profession or job, CEO.
It can be the high intensity. It can be the high intensity housewife too. That just has a lot going on in her head, right?
And that's where we have to get into things like, because some people don't realize that in a traumatic event or a period of traumatic or a difficult period in their life can stick them in a brain strategy. So we see this in like nurses. Nurses will work for years, for example, in very difficult environments, and they don't understand how that's changing their behavior, and it's changing their nervous system, and it's changing their brain. And if they go through something like neurofeedback or EMDR, it can get them out of that strategy of, because when your HRV is low, it generally means that you're stuck in a stressed out state too often, and you need to be able to shut that off. But if your normal has become living in that stress state, then I tell people it's a little bit like if the brain is a big house with a lot of doors. Imagine telling somebody to open a door that they've never been to before, right? If you learn how to get there, it's easy to do. But if you forget the way, or if it's hidden somehow, and imagine trying to navigate a house without being able to see anything, right? It's a little bit like that. So,
Well,
yeah,
the biggest mistake people make with HRV is they think if they have a low HRV, they're not going to be able to perform. That's not true. You can have world record type performances with a low HRV. The thing that it means is you're not going to likely adapt to that hard performance. You're going to have a hard time adapting to it and from it and getting better from it. You're less adaptable, right? So when you have low HRV, you have a harder time switching between the two sides, and then you have a harder time adapting to that stress. You're not going to adapt over time, and so it just means you're just less adaptable. That's essentially what it means. And if you're in that state for long periods of time, it just means the probability of you breaking from a high stress situation is just a lot higher.
Yes, and that's exactly right. And it's very important for people to understand that there's nothing wrong with that strategy for periods of time, right? We've all been in situations, and if you haven't, you will be one day, where you had to make difficult decisions on the fly. You had to confront ugly, dramatic, even terrifying things, and you allow your physiology to kick in to allow you to deal with that situation. But if you don't, then balance that with rest and regeneration. And not and the funny thing that we see a lot is that people who get to a high level of anything, they get stuck in that strategy because it's where they access that high performance. And they can actually become, if you look at the science of addiction and behavior, you'll see that people actually get addicted to these chemicals of stress. And that's part of why, you'll see, and it's part of why people will go back to their people who are abusing them, right? Women going back to abusive boyfriends, or boyfriends going back to abusive girlfriends, or workers going back to abusive jobs. We see that in healthcare a lot. I think a lot of healthcare workers are trauma bonded to the hospital. And that's part of why the setting is so dysfunctional, and why patients see it and they're like, this is sick and weird, and why are you guys treating us this way? But the providers are used to it and habituated to it. They don't actually bother to break the cycle. So it creates a lot of dysfunction when you're stuck in these strategies, and you have to get out of them in order to be healthy and well.
Well, people get in that state, where that high stress state, their brain really functions best in that state. So they don't know how to. It's kind of like powerlifting, right? If you're always doing heavy deadlifts, you're always doing heavy squats, and then I put you on the floor and I have you do some really easy bird dogs where you're breathing and they're shaking, and they can't execute very simple tasks without bearing down. And it's the same thing with the brain. So if you have people that are chronically in a high stress state, they only know how to function in that state.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
They're doing low level tasks and they're having to have coffee or caffeine because they're like, I don't feel like I'm in the zone enough to actually, and they start to relax, and their brain's like, I don't know how to do this. This is very difficult for me. Like, I have one of our people in the fundamentals of wellness went to the float tank for the first time, and the person was like, this was torture. Like, I tried to relax, but I couldn't. My brain was like running all over the place. It wouldn't allow them to. We deal with that a lot with people that do like a simple meditation. They can't literally sit still for 3 minutes. And I was the same way. It took me a good year to learn how to sit quietly for several minutes without my mind rolling all over the place. And I have to be very careful, because if I let myself get in that situation where I start scrolling through YouTube or scrolling through Instagram, I can get caught in that loop again, and I can feel myself being pulled. Okay, I'm not making the time to chill, and I'm not shutting my brain off, and I'm getting stuck in that loop, right? And that's where things like neurofeedback and EMDR can really help you get out of that strategy. And that's where things where nicotine, energy drinks, then you add into that the fact that your nutrition is not good, your sleep's not good, and your body just continues to do everything it can to rev you up, so you can feel normal, right?
Yeah. That's why what I'm presenting on today, I'm presenting two topics. One of them is how to manage insane ambition without allowing it to, or preventing it from destroying your health. And the second topic is going to be how I use nutrients to replace energy drinks, because we see this so often. People are using, and it's funny, I was in a supplement store here, it will remain nameless, and I was looking at some of the options they have for people for nootropics and pre-workout, and basically everyone in that commercial space is using the same 3, 4, 5 ingredients, nutrients, to drive performance, and all of them are they're not sustainable strategies.
Let me
So
guess.
what we need,
L-tyrosine.
oh,
L-tyrosine.
what did I use or that they
No,
use?
no. Let me guess what the products have in it. L-tyrosine.
No,
No,
I was looking
couldn't have
around and
L-tyrosine.
hoping that someone would put tyrosine in them, but there were a couple of essential amino acid formulations where there was tyrosine, but overwhelmingly the focus in what the products I was looking at was things like betaine, things like caffeine, a lot of caffeine,
Yeah.
green
Get that
coffee or green
cortisol.
tea
Get that cortisol up.
extract. Yeah, block those adenosine receptors. Other things. Well, I was shocked, kind
Well,
of, actually.
it's a great business model, because basically you get them more. They have to take more of it in order to get the same effect, because the more they take it, the more they need, right?
I know.
So
that's right. So
well, and if a lot of these hard chargers just understood, like, it doesn't take that much shutting off to get the benefit, so you can go harder, like 1
5 to
float
10
tank
minutes.
session a week, right? 3 10-minute walks a day. Like, these are, you don't have to like go up in the Himalayas and be a monk, especially when you're young. If you can get a lot of these habits into your life, where it's like, okay, I've just worked really hard for an hour and a half, 2 hours, I just got off a call. Instead of jumping on the next call, I'm going to go sit outside for 10 minutes and I'm just going to breathe through my nose and relax. And you go back into the next meeting refreshed. But a lot of people, when they turn it off, they can't turn it back. They don't know how to turn it on and turn it off. And so that's something we have to teach people, and that takes time.
Absolutely, it does. It also takes time for them to integrate it into their daily habits and routines. So, Jim, I love the curls for low back pain. It's a really important. What's just so important that people understand that just by changing their exercise selection and the position in which they're doing the exercise, they can have a profound impact on their life. And this feeds back into what we got into about HRV, in that when you are in pain, low back pain as one example, that is a stressed state. Mm-hmm. And that will drive the stress that we're talking about, that demolishes your HRV and inhibits your ability to recover. I mean, the worst cases we tackle are people who are in chronic pain and don't know how to get out of it. And they're tough because that state is so stressed compared to not being in pain. That's also why there's such an industry for pain management to pain treatment. From everything from regenerative and integrative orthopedics to invasive surgeries. It's all treating these end stages that are really decades in the making. And if you learn how to use your body, as Jim can teach you in our fundamentals of wellness, then you can really head off a lot of these problems.
Yep, exactly. You need to learn how to work in so you can push hard.
Right.
So, yeah. And what was I going to say? We got our webinar right after this at 10 o'clock. So get on our email list at stillmanwellness.com. So you can be on our webinar next week. Pardon me?
This week it's Detox Secrets.
This detox right after this. I was prepared to do it all by myself too, by the way.
I appreciate that.
I've listened to you enough. I think I could have done a decent job on my own.
I'll be here.
I know you will.
Yeah, the time zone difference is a little tough, but it's all right.
It is. But I like the background. That's good. That's the
it's funny though, right? Like this light is, for those of you who are listening, I'm out in Palm Springs, and so it's very sunny already, but I'm in the shade, so we have this really weird split level on the video. Where it's very,
if you're listening,
it's just white up top.
If you're listening to this on the podcast on like Spotify or Google, actually Apple's our number one podcaster platform. Funny. You can go watch the video we're talking about by clicking in a link in the description. So that way you kind of know what we're talking about.
And if you love us,
give me a like on YouTube. So
give us some reviews. We love those. All right, Jim. Talk to you in a minute.
All right. Make sure you guys have a great day and remember to get outside.